Welcome to ISAP, the International Forum for Sustainable Asia and the Pacific 2022, organized by IGES, the Institute for Global Environmental Strategies. We are pleased to start thematic session 3, IGES contribution to climate and SDGs synergy. I'm Junichi Fujino, Principal Researcher of Integrated Sustainability Center at IGES, and I'll moderate the session today. I'm joined by Professor Kazuhiko Takeuchi, President of IGES, Ms. Bahare Seidi, Senior Sustainable Development Officer, UNDESA, Mr. Daniel Bieretti, Senior Director Program Coordination, UNFCCC, Dr. Yasuhiko Hota, Program Director of Sustainable Consumption and Production, IGES, Ms. Akane Matsuo, Policy Researcher of Adaptation of Water, IGES, and Dr. Mustafa Muhyiddin, Deputy Director of Integrated Sustainability Center, IGES. Thank you all for giving us your very precious time. The session will be 60 minutes long, and I hope you will enjoy and actively participate. Now, let's start the session. I would like to invite our first speaker, our President, Professor Kazuhiko Takeuchi, who recently joined the UNFCCC COP27. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Fujino-san, for your introduction. Today, my talk is to discuss about the main outcomes of the third global conference on climate and SDGs synergies, and discussing about what will be the next steps. This is a basic structure of the global agenda. We have the 2030 agenda for sustainable development to be achieved by the year 2030. And we also have the Paris Agreement aiming to achieve the net zero by the year 2050. And also, in addition to these two very important global challenges, we also have the post-2020 biodiversity framework, which will be determined in December in Montreal at the CBD COP15. So these are interrelated, and it is not effective for us to pursue all the different global agendas individually, but we need to integrate rather fragmented global discussion to get more effective achievement by the year 2030 and by the year 2050 to achieve the net zero emission society, as well as the 20% net gain on biodiversity. This is a UN Climate and SDG Synergy Conference we organized very recently at UNU, United Nations University, headquartered in Tokyo, where I served as a senior vice rector. And it was a very fruitful discussion with the attendance of many participants from the different countries. And based on the organization composed of UNDESA and UNFCCC, these are the major bodies of discussing about the synergy between the two global agendas. And we also have the Ministry of the Environment, the Government of Japan, to host this very important conference in Tokyo. And I just was supporting all these organizations, and substantially we could contribute a lot for the development of the discussion. This is the history of the Synergy Conference. First, the Synergy Conference was held in Copenhagen in April 2019. And then next conference, we organized virtually in 2020. But because of the COVID-19, we wanted to continue, but we were obliged to postpone. And finally, we could organize the third conference here in Tokyo. And we are very glad that the former Minister of the Environment, Mr. Koizumi, supported our ideas of organizing the third conference in Tokyo, and it was materialized. And one of the significance of this third conference is the attendance of the younger generation who will be responsible for the future of the sustainability of our planet. These are the major takeaways from the Tokyo conference. We summarized the documents, conference documents, and I just contributed a lot for summarizing this document. And also, we supported in making of the conference reports, which include the Japanese concept of circulating and ecological sphere, or CES, combined with the decarbonization leading municipalities in Japan and elsewhere, particularly in Southeast Asia. And then I would like to emphasize that the three Japanese youth groups work together with global youth to develop youth policy proposal that shared at closing plenary session. So these are the results, and major findings could summarize as such. One is a strengthening of the evidence base for synergetic action, and two is convening multi-stakeholder dialogues at all levels. And third is enhancing integrated planning. And fourth is partnership for transformation. And fifth is informing key intergovernmental processes on climate and SDGs. And as I already explained, CES concept and decarbonization leading areas were included in the final documents. We have many other opportunities. In December, we will have the CBD COP15, as I already explained, to get a new biodiversity, post-2020 biodiversity framework. And we have the G7 held in Japan and G20 in India next year. And we're expecting that UNFCCC and the UNDESA will organize the fourth Synergy Conference next year. And we'll have the SDG Summit and Global State Stocktake in next year. So how can we boost the synergetic actions, especially how our institute, IGES, can contribute to sustainable and carbon neutral planet? This is our challenges. And I hope that today's discussion will contribute to deepen our discussion and to find out what sort of the way that we could take in order to contribute to the global sustainability from our organization and also other organizations. So thank you very much for your kind listening.
Thank you very much, Professor Takeuchi, for sharing the outcome of the third Synergy Conference, also the sharing the further next step, and then how this conference, this synergy is important to IGES. Thank you so much. Then next, I would like to invite two speakers, two conveners of this UN challenge, UN initiative for synergy. One is from the UNDESA, Ms. Bahare Seiji, who she kindly sent us the video message. So please, let's share her video.
Thank you for the invitation to join this session on climate and SDG synergies. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris Agreement are intrinsically linked. And despite the important progress that has been made since 2015, when these agendas were adopted, we are still off track on meeting many of the SDGs by 2030. This includes the goal on eradicating poverty, the goal on inequalities, the goals related to energy access, water, food security. And when we look at the Paris goals, the UNFCCC synthesis report clearly shows that if we continue the same trajectories on GHG emissions, we will get closer to a world with 2.5 degrees of warming. It is in this context that we have to raise ambition and speed up implementation of the SDGs and the climate goals. Now, there is a growing body of evidence that suggests seeking synergies between the SDGs and climate action can lead to win-win solutions, and that simultaneously these two agendas can be advanced through integrated approaches. This includes the latest assessment by the IPCC, where it clearly demonstrates climate change will have a profound impact on our ability to meet many of the SDGs, and vice versa. Well-designed mitigation and adaptation policies can help advance sustainable development. The key here is to maximize synergies where they exist while minimizing trade-offs. And that's why at UNDESA, in collaboration with UNFCCC, we have been convening a number of global dialogues to strengthen synergies between the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris Agreement. This includes the third Global Conference on Climate and the SDGs Synergies, which took place in July in Japan. It was hosted by the Ministry of Environment of Japan in collaboration with the United Nations University, as well as, of course, IGES. And more recently at COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, we had a number of discussions on how to build on the outcomes of the third global conference as we look into 2023 and start preparations for the fourth global conference on this topic. Now, for the sake of this discussion today, I'd like to highlight one of the key recommendations that has emerged from the dialogues this year, and that is the importance of building the evidence base. When we looked at the evidence and scientific analysis on the linkages between the SDGs and climate change, we observed two key issues. One was that the quantity and the quality of data was not distributed equally across all sectors. So we have more information in terms of synergies and trade-offs on a particular sector, where in other sectors we may not have as much data. And the second issue that we noted is that this information is dispersed across many different resources, many different reports, and by many different institutions. There is no global resource that policymakers can refer to when they want to better understand synergies and trade-offs of all the SDGs and climate change. So I do hope that the session today can shed light on some of these issues, as well as the other outcomes that emerged from the third global conference and the discussions that we had at the COP. I do wish you a productive session, and of course we look forward to continuing our collaboration with IGES as we start the preparations for the fourth global conference, and I look forward to hearing about the outcomes of this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bahare, for sharing your message after COP27 mission. We had a very good session at the COP27 organized by DESA at the SDG Pavilion. Professor Takeuchi shared the keynote. So we can continue. We also have a message from the UNFCCC, Mr. Daniele Violetti. But he kindly sent us a written message. So I would like to ask my colleague Fukuda-san to share his message. So Fukuda-san, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure that I address you today at this event on IGES contributions to climate and SDG synergy, and to reflect and build on successful outcomes of the third UN Climate Change and SDGs Conference, to which the Institute for Global Environmental Strategies made substantial contributions. I was encouraged to see a high level of interest and engagement during the conference in July, including the participation of the 30 ministers, head of UN organizations and agencies, and other high-level representatives. This reinforced the relevance and importance of strengthening synergies between climate change and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. In their statement, a common thread was a need to urgently address climate change and emphasize the need for greater SDG and climate ambition. enhancing joint implementation and addressing existing gaps, such as in financing, data, and capacity building, was also highlighted. But for the second year in a row, the world is no longer making progress on the SDGs. Multiple and overlapping health and security crises have led to a reversal in SDG progress. We need to get back on track. Whether it be through commitments to channel larger flows of financing for developing countries by increasing the lending capacity of developing banks or by strengthening their debt management, a global finance plan is needed to provide for low and lower middle income countries to access capital and acceptable terms in order for us to reach the global goal together. And to achieve this, we need to recognize that the sustainable development challenges are inseparable. And we have seen in the last few years how interconnected our world is with respect to achieving the 2030 Agenda on Sustainable Development Goals. Greater synergies are needed at the national level through cooperation across ministries and globally through enhanced collaboration amongst international organizations. The 2015 Paris Agreement and the 2030 Agenda with its sets of 17 SDGs together give us the roadmap to building a more sustainable and resilient world. They provide us with a long-term vision of what the future could look like, one that considers the health of the planet, all forms of life, and the sustainable use of its resources. This is a vision that is clearly reflected in each of the SDGs. As SDG 13 is intrinsically related to most of other SDGs, climate change is a threat multiplier. Taking action on adaptation to climate change, for example, addresses these issues as it reduces our vulnerability to the harmful effects of climate change and encompasses making the most of any potential beneficial opportunities associated with climate change. That's why when we consider any of our global challenges, we must consider the cross-cutting nature of climate change. It is vital for nations to work as hard as possible in order to meet their commitment under the Paris Agreement and to achieve the 1.5 degrees Celsius goals. To address these issues will be a challenge, but we must neither lose hope nor focus. We urgently need political plans, decisions, and actions, and to see these reflected in ambitious, nationally determined contributions, long-term plans, and national adaptation plans. We must band together towards our common goal to battle the greatest threat to global security, climate change, and further explore what we can do together to bring the Paris Agreement for climate change and Agenda 2030 for sustainable development closer together to accelerate progress. I look forward to hearing the outcomes of your discussion and to further contributions by IGES to strengthen synergies between climate change and SDGs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniele, for sending your message even after the very tough negotiation at the COP27 Sharm el-Sheikh. And also, Fukuda-san, thank you for reading his message. Okay, then let's move to the panel session to share how IGES can contribute to the synergy activity. And then first, I would like to invite our colleague, Ms. Akane Matsuo, to sharing how we can contribute to climate SDGs and then risk reduction synergy. So, floor is yours.
Thank you very much for your introduction. My name is Akane Matsuo. I'm a policy researcher at Adaptation and Water Area in IGES. Thank you very much for providing this opportunity to be part of today's important session on the synergies between climate change and the SDGs. Today, I'm going to share the overview and some of the initiatives IGES have been involved in from the perspectives of synergies between climate change adaptation, disaster risk reduction, and the SDGs. As you know, the frequency and severity of climate-related disasters has intensified across the world, which makes climate change adaptation an urgent issue. As climate change is one of the key drivers of disaster risks, it is required to integrate the efforts between climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction. Many of post-2015 agreements include elements of climate change and disaster risk reduction. The effective implementation of these agreements provide an opportunity to address underlying multiple risk drivers. The UNFCCC COP24 decision also mentioned strengthening linkages with the monitoring systems of Sustainable Development Goals and the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction. In the latest IPCC assessment, the relations were assessed based on the impacts of the climate response and adaptation option on each SDG. There are clear synergies between taking adaptation measures and achieving the SDGs. Adaptation options such as coastal management, agroforestry, health system have benefits to more than 10 SDGs. Other adaptation measures across sectors such as disaster management and improve water use efficiency have also been shown to contribute to the SDGs. In the area of disaster risk reduction especially, the SFDRR and the SDGs, Goal 1, 11, and 13, have already been integrated in their monitoring indicators. Since there will be an interim monitoring of the FDRR next year, it is expected that its contribution to the SDGs will also be measured at that time. On the other hand, when it comes to climate change adaptation, there are no quantitative indicators to measure the progress of adaptation efforts towards Global Goal on Adaptation, or GGA, set forth in Paris Agreement. The SFDRR and the SDGs are often referred as indicators of existing global goals. However, many consider that the development of a global adaptation matrix and its integration with other global indicators will not be easy because climate change impacts and adaptation measures are very location-specific. These are some international contexts of the synergies between climate change adaptation, disaster risk reduction, and SDGs. Now I'd like to introduce some of the initiatives that Japan or IGES have been engaging. In 2020, the Japanese government has announced the Ministry of Environment and Ministry of State for Disaster Management will promote synergies between climate action and disaster risk reduction through cooperation with relevant ministers and agencies. For example, the concept of inasu, an ancient Japanese wisdom to gently mitigate disasters such as floods, is a useful concept for developing countries as its cost effectiveness. Last year, I just developed a website showcasing such good practices with support from Ministry of the Environment Japan. So if you're interested, please visit this website. In terms of regional and national level efforts, IGES Bangkok office implemented the DRR-CCA project for ASEAN countries. In phase 1, we developed various tools such as hazard maps for disaster risk reduction against floods and landslides, taking climate change impacts into account. All deliverables are available on the website. Phase 2 of the project, targeting Cambodia and Vietnam, will include climate risk assessment and strengthening of DRR measures, including drought, and it is scheduled to start next year in 2023. The latest and upcoming initiative is the UN Early Warning Systems for All, launched this September by the World Meteorological Organization at the urging of the UN Secretary General. This was also included in the COP27 cover decision as an important initiative that will contribute to both adaptation and loss and damage. The WMO announced its work plan at COP27, and Japanese Ministry of the Environment expressed its support for the initiative. In the work plan, it is clearly mentioned that this initiative will contribute to several SDGs, and the progress will be shared at several international occasions, including the UN SDG Summit. IGES plans to conduct research or capacity development projects in accordance with this initiative, and one of the ongoing capacity development projects is on strengthening resilience to compound and cascading disaster risks. Detail will be presented at thematic track 9 on December 1st in ISAP, so interested audience are encouraged to attend the session. But to summarize, synergies between climate change adaptation, disaster risk reduction, and the SDGs could be addressed from following aspects. First, there are clear benefits to the SDGs by taking measures of climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction. If the capacity for data collection and assessment of adaptation increases, it also helps reporting system for the 3 global agendas at the national level. Namely, the improved coordination results reduce reporting burden for countries and enhances cost effectiveness of measures that cut across the 3 global agendas. Finally, to make the integration of efforts more inclusive, different levels of engagement from local, national, regional actions to international agreements need to be aligned to follow the same direction, whereby various stakeholders in different sectors take up opportunities in their own fields with the same global goals. That's all from my presentation. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Matsuo-san, for sharing the our contribution to synergy from the perspective of the adaptation and disaster risk reduction, and also this early warming for all systems. It's one of the very key achievement by the UNFCCC COP27 discussion. Yeah, so thank you so much. Then next, I would like to invite our colleague, Dr. Mustafa Moinuddin. He will share how interlinkage and analysis can contribute to the synergy. So, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Fujino-san. Hello, everybody. It's my pleasure to be able to join this ICEP thematic tracks. Okay. Sorry about the microphone issue. So once again, hello, everybody. It's my pleasure to join this ICEP thematic session on climate change and SDGs synergies, and to share some of my works on this topic at IGES. My name is Mustafa Moinuddin, and I work as a researcher and deputy director at the Integrated Sustainability Center of IGES. So the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris Agreement have a common global vision for sustainable development. We all know that these two agendas are closely interlinked. They go hand in hand. And this means that addressing climate change is a prerequisite for achieving the SDGs. On the other hand, for climate change to succeed, we need to make progress in many of the SDG areas. We need to mobilize resources, including human, financial, and technical. And but it's only through these that we can think about addressing the climate change and achieving a carbon neutral economy. So at IGES, we are looking at this relationship from an SDG interlinkage perspective. We developed a methodology and a tool. We call it the IGES SDG Interlinkages Analysis and Visualization Tool, which is a transparent and easy to use tool that can help us identify, quantify, and visualize the interlinkages among the SDGs at the target levels. We have already applied this methodology to provide policy support to several countries, including Bangladesh and Indonesia, on understanding the relations among the SDGs and for integrated SDG policy making. So we have a special focus on SDG 13 on climate action. To understand the linkages between climate actions and SDGs, we developed and conducted a systematic literature review using an artificial intelligence-based natural language processing technique. The figure you see here shows the complex interactions of climate actions with other SDGs. So in this technique analysis, we found over 100 connecting points and close to 1,000 links between these two agendas, SDGs and climate actions. The figure here gives a visualization of the qualitative SDG interlinkages model for Goal 13 on climate action. This interlinkage perspective is important in developing plans and policies. This is because the impacts of climate actions can be quite uneven across SDGs and of course vice versa. So here is an example from the NDC SDG Connection Tool, the Nationally Determined Contributions and SDG Connection Tool from the German Development Institute and Stockholm Environment Institute. The tool shows that at the global level, climate actions typically prioritize economic and environmental SDGs, but not so much the social ones such as education or gender. The SDGs and climate actions are global commitments, but their implementation is at the local level. Many policy-related competencies, for example, water, housing, infrastructure, or climate change, are often within the scope of cities and regions. These local authorities have the potential to respond dynamically to climate change and SDGs. So again, at IGES, we conducted a study in Indonesia's West Java province to support the integration of SDGs into West Java's long-term climate mitigation strategy development. Using our interlinkages model for SDG 13, climate action, we organized a stakeholders consultation through a survey and focus group discussions to raise awareness and to create knowledge on climate SDG synergies and trade-offs specifically for West Java. We identified the key challenges and issues in West Java related to climate change and their linkages with SDG targets in other areas. For example, economy, society, environment, and governance. And IGES publication, a discussion paper has also been published. You can see it on the top right side of this slide. And this is available from IGES website. So here is what we found from our study at the West Java study. Due to the overlapping nature of SDG and climate actions, a clearer understanding of the interlinkages is needed to integrate these two agendas. These interlinkages are very specific to local context. So engaging with stakeholders can help design the integrated approach at the local level by considering the socioeconomic and biophysical characteristics, priorities, and challenges facing the region and within the broader national development plans. Integrated approaches can bridge the gap between national and local policy processes. And for this to work, we need to have enabling conditions such as strengthened governance, institutional arrangements, and clarified budget lines. And this is only through this that we can achieve localizing the SDGs and climate actions. And here, civil society can boost accountability for spending the money and policy decisions on climate and SDGs. Knowledge gained from science-based studies, such as an in-depth SDG interlinkage analysis, can provide important insights and support the local policy processes, including the development of voluntary local reviews. Lastly, the experience gained from our stakeholders' engagement activity is expected to feed into similar activities in other regions, cities, and provinces within and beyond Indonesia. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mustafa-san, for sharing your methodology and also case study in West Java and the insights how your study can contribute to the synergy approach. Thank you so much. Then now I would like to invite also our colleague, Dr. Yasuhiko Hotta, for sharing your comment, also your insight based on your expertise on sustainable consumption and production, circular economy. So, Hotta-san, floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Fujino-san. So I'd like to highlight the three observations related to recent discussions, and which is increasingly requiring the synergies among the different sustainability agendas. And first change that I observe is related to my area in the waste management or circular economy, mainstreaming circular economy. And the waste management has been the very much local issue for a long time. But around 1990s, because of the increasing consumption and pollution in developing countries, the many international organizations or national governments or the experts try to mainstream waste management a global issue. And for that, we try to link this with climate issue or like a resource issue. But in my opinion, it was not so successful. The linking waste issue with climate issues through like methane emission from the landfill site, or like how recycling can contribute to the reducing the GHG compared to the virgin materials, not so convincing. and also like resource scarcity issue and the recycling. But when it comes to the resource scarcity, it's not that, how to say, like appealing to the citizens and so on. So I think that is why nowadays that we try to focus on the plastic issue and food issue. And those two issues are more sector-based focus. Like, so the focus is coming from the environmental, shifting from environmental issue to sector focus, which can go beyond the different sectors, and it can, how to say, easily link to the life cycles of the material use and consumption. And when we focus on the, like, for example, like food or plastic, that kind of sectoral issue, we can also focusing on the business model change or the lifestyle change and that kind of issues. That is my first observation. The second observation is little bit quite related to this point, but in the discussion or the solution for this, in discussion on the solution related to this is a little bit shifting now. So from 1990s to early 2000, the major discussion is how to increase the resource efficiency and energy efficiency. And especially in the facility level or product level, that would be the solution, main solution that we are trying to promote. But now I think the discussion is more on the socio-economic transition. It means like change of the infrastructure, change of the lifestyle, change of the business models. And this is again which is going beyond, how to say, this environmental pollution focused discussion. And third one point is that because this is happening because I think the of the mainstreaming of the sustainability agenda, the agreement of Paris agreement, or like the Osaka Blue Ocean vision for of the G20 on marine plastics is, I think, in terms of the target setting, it was a kind of breakthrough. It made a very ambitious target setting, and so basic direction for very ambitious target setting was there from the policymakers. So now the issue is how to say, envision the society which can achieve such kind of very ambitious target. So like envisioning is becoming very important aspect. To make the envisioning very visible to normal citizens or businesses, I think it is time for need for very experimental projects. And experimental project means requiring the change in business models, lifestyles, and then community. So I think if you look from the conventional focus of the for example, climate change or biodiversity and waste management, we tend to say we require synergies. But I think it's not that. We are going into the era of the social technical transformation and how to build some sort of the new business model in the new era. So when you see from that, the synergy is very natural. Well, it is because like everyone's lifestyle is related to all the aspects of the different aspect of environmental issues, and also business activities related to all the different aspects of the environmental issues. I think we need to change the point of view. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Hotta-san, for sharing your insight from your long time research activity, also your experience, and it's very much impressed that how to having envisioning our future, how we will materialize synergy. Synergy is quite common sense sometimes, and then but for the business side or for the citizen side, how we can show the visible example, visible future. It's quite impressive. I would like to ask the two panelists how you would like to respond to Hotta-san's comments. First, I would like to invite Matsuo-san.
Thank you very much, Fujino-san. So to respond Hotta-san's comment, I realized actually everything he mentioned is can be related to climate change adaptation as well. So today my presentation focused on disaster risk reduction, but for example, in the area of waste management, the waste management should be resilient against climate change as well. For example, many of the waste management system are built near the coast, which is very vulnerable to climate change. So from such perspective, the synergy is again important. Likewise, for example, food security and also the climate smart agriculture, which is resilient to climate change, is a very important issue. And especially this last COP27, it was the presidency, Egypt government had special focus on food security, because everybody knows there is food crisis in African continent. So likewise, so I could really connect linkages between sustainable consumption and production and climate change adaptation. So, and of course, this also related to lifestyle change, like especially in Japan, we are very very exposed to very different kinds of disasters. And as everybody noticed, the level and number of disasters are increasing, like flood is happening every year. So this disaster risk reduction, because of climate change, could be also integrated into citizens' lifestyle. And Japan, maybe we can show some good practices, or like as Hotta-san said, conduct some pilot project and spread that to international. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matsuo-san. Also, like biodiversity, and now we are discussing like 30 by 30 or nature positive, or like they also try to setting the ambitious target, and then how these targets connect with the business side, or like lifestyle change, or to develop the new community. Also for the business, like TNFD discussion is happening. So it's quite interesting. So next I would like to invite Mustafa-san. So over to you.
Thank you very much again, Fujino-san and Hotta-san. So I'll try to address it from my experience on working on the SDG interlinkages analysis methodology. So slightly from a different perspective. When we started working on this methodology and this tool, I think it was around 2015, we started working on SDG and the indicators. We realized that there are 17 SDGs, 169 targets, and 200 plus indicators that came a bit later. And we felt that all these issues, all these goals and the targets, there was some kind of interactions going on, some linkages going on, intrinsically integrated into it. And that is why we thought that when we talk about the 2030 agenda and taking a holistic approach, integrated approach to implement them, we need to understand the linkages among them. And this is a relatively new kind of new approach. It's going away from the silo-based approach and something that policymakers, researchers, we did not have sufficient knowledge about. And that's why we thought that it would be good if we try to look into it. It would be good if we try to understand how this kind of interlinkages, the connections among the SDG targets, they work with each other. And then we started to look into like what is the nature of the connection. Can we quantify it? Can we see the direction? Can we quantify it? That's why we started, and in our tool, we tried to look into the causal relations at first, to identify between each target pair. We try to see if there is a connection between these two or not. If there is a connection, what would be the possible direction? And then, based on national level data, but we try to quantify the strength of these relations. So the interlinkages tool that we have developed works for all the 17 SDGs. And we, of course, we also have some thematic studies, for example, these climate actions and SDGs, and also we work on biodiversity and some others. So, and the waste management is, of course, a very important part in our study as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mustafa-san. And then, yeah, this SDGs interlinkage tool is quite the powerful and to envision how these all the goals are related and on the like a local base or national base, and then yeah, it's quite the key tool to also the how to quantify the linkage among the each goal. So yeah, thank you very much for your comments. We also have 4 Q&A, and so now I would like to pick up the questions, and then I would like to ask the panelists if you would like to respond to any question. I'm very much happy to invite you. And then the first question is to Professor Takeuchi, but we may need to respond finally. Then I'd like to pick up the question from number 2. The question is to all panel members: if SDGs, disaster risk and climate change have synergy, why not focus only on 1 or 2 of these 3 instead of working on all 3? Why do we need 3 global agendas? Who can respond?
Yes, maybe I talked about disaster risk reduction, so I can respond to this question. So thank you very much for your question. Yeah, as you know, actually the synergies between climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction has been discussed even before the SDG agenda. So that has a longer history. But then SDG came in, and then there was a discussion, like while working on the synergies between climate change and disaster risk reduction, it will also contribute to the SDG goals. For example, like health, there is a target related to health system. And for example, by working on climate change adaptation, facing to the heat wave, which caused the disaster as well, but it will increase the resilience to our health system as well. So by taking measures of climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction, it will sometimes automatically contribute to other SDGs targets. So it is very important to realize and be conscious about it, so that we can effectively continue those adaptation and DRR measures. So I think I would say by the point of effectiveness view, I think it's important to consider 3 global agendas at the same time, not like separately. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, then may we go to next question. So to any panel, the target year of SDG is 2030 and carbon neutral for many countries is 2050. is the idea of SDGs going to be held after 2030, or is there going to be a new goal that replaces SDGs after 2030? Who would like to respond? Or maybe may I invite Mustafa-san? Okay.
Just a second, let me read the question for a second. Yeah, okay. So I think I can talk about particularly for the SDGs. I think that even if the SDGs are targeted up to 2030, the essence of sustainable development will continue even beyond that. And I think many organizations, including the UN, have already started thinking and working on the post-2030 agenda. So the essence of SDGs will be continued, because sustainable development is not bound by this 2030 year. So it will continue, and maybe there will be some changes. Maybe some elements will be continued, but the overall agenda will continue for sure. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mustafa-san. And then I think officially, yeah, we need to achieve the 2030 goals first, and then, but if there is any other things left, then we may need to have a new agenda. But firstly, next year we have a SDG summit, and then this summit will look at the progress of the SDGs, and then we may, after these kind of checking points, we may need to discuss further. Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, so we also have other questions. The number 4 is currently the environmental destruction is going on in Tokyo due to the series of overdevelopment. The huge facilities are planned to build over years in this sense. The current business model and the policy are not working well. Is there any way to stop this situation? It's quite a specific one, but may I invite Hotta-san to respond?
Yeah, on the specific point, that I think whether we can utilize the conventional tools, like there are many conventional way to convey a message to the decision making is there, and also there are many policy tools to prevent such kind of the overdevelopment. But so that is first point. But the second point, that the question is in the right in sense. Some of the business model is like a machine. So without, how to say, changing the philosophy behind the machine, or like some sort of the income generation model, like we cannot stop that. So like we need to demonstrate that there are alternative way. So for example, if we are very much dependent on the single-use plastics, but if we can show that there are very, very convenient and profitable way to, how to say, like deliver products, or like food and beverage without using single-use plastics, and then less environmental destruction, then I think the business model can adopt it. It is time, I think, for, how to say, show some sort of the new business model through experimentation. But for that, we need also some sort of the policy support and certain kind of the infrastructure development. So we cannot only blame businesses, but we need quite strong policy support. And also for that, we need a good vision, because I talk sometimes with some of the large retailers companies. Those large retailer companies sometimes say like they really want to change their business model, but they don't know how, because they are so used to their current business model. So without, how to say, showing there's a new business model, new way together, like with academic or government and the local government and the citizens to experiment on, those big business cannot change, I think. So that's why I think I'm saying it is a time for the experiments.
Thank you very much for deep thought, sharing deep thought. We have another 2 questions, but I would like to pick up the first one. Last one, Mustafa-san, if you can respond by you are how to say, if you write the answer by comment, I appreciate it. And so I would like to invite just the one last question. The first one, it's to Professor Takeuchi, but I would like to ask all of you to respond somehow. The society is transforming faster than the institutions, while institutions are expected to lead the transformation. Do we need to flip the scenario or let the institution catch up with the dynamic change the society is going through? How to address this challenge, especially for government institutions that are slow to catch up and lead the change? How IGES can help institutions to transform and be a transformational change agents? Thank you. So may I invite Matsuo-san first?
Thank you very much for your question. So yeah, IGES is a policy research institute. So we have opportunities to influence national and local governments' policies by using our research results. So I think having strong connection with government policymakers and influencing the policy is the first thing we can do. So while policymakers develop their policies, we can include some targets or measuring systems of the synergies of those global agendas, and that will ultimately lead to the changing transformative society. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matsuo-san. So Mustafa-san, what is your response?
Thank you very much, Fujino-san. So yes, IGES is a policy research institute, and we are working as an agent of change. And particularly for me, I work at the interface of science and policy to see how we can translate the knowledge gained from scientific studies into policy. So to that end, we produce science-based, science and evidence-based research works that through our networks, through our connections, collaborating with the national and as well as local authorities, we try to provide policy support. This is something that we have done previously with several countries. For example, we worked on integrated SDG planning and institutional arrangement in Bangladesh. We using the SDG, our SDG interlinkage methodology. We have worked with in Indonesia, where the Indonesian government, the planning commissions, particularly the SDG Secretariat, has used the results from the IGES SDG interlinkages methodology in developing their one chapter in their SDGs roadmap. And similarly, if you look at Indonesia's VNR 2019 Voluntary National Review 2019-2021, you will see the use of some of the results from our methodology in the context of Indonesia. And there are many other examples. So I just want to give you, provide some instances over here. What is important is to I think create solid science-based research outputs and find ways to disseminate it to the right persons, to the right authorities, and to show how this can this can support the policy making. Yeah, I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mustafa-san. So, Hotta-san?
I totally agree with what the question is saying. So, for example, that we have been working on the supporting ASEAN cities for improving waste management. And when that we try to develop some sort of the action plan or policy for them, just writing policy by observing what is going on is not enough. When we are very successful in setting up some sort of the mechanism for the local government to, how to say, actually listen to the different stakeholders and reflecting to that, and by reflecting that, make sure there is ownership for the outcome, and then that those policies can be implemented. So it's very institutional, and we need to remind ourselves in the end, sustainability issue is not only about natural environment, it is very social and institutional. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, all your response. And then still we have another question, but its time is coming. So I'd like to stop this session. I very much appreciate all the panelists and also the participants who kindly joined today's session. Yeah, I believe today's session is quite insightful and then to sharing the way how the IGES contribute to synergy and also how envision our new future, like how to shift the norm from the like a traditional one to the like how to have sustainable and then kind of economic wise, and then how we like to have also resource well managed system development. Before we completely close out this session, I'd like to ask a favor of all of you in the audience. When the session concludes, you will be present with a survey in Zoom. Your feedback is very important for us to improve your session. So please take a moment to fill it out. So ISAP session itself, we will continue until 5th of December. So please join the other session too. So thank you very much for joining the session, all the panelists and then all the staff and also participants. And then have a good evening and then have a good day. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
ありがとうございました。Thank you so
Thank you.
much.